Hi, my name is Rainer Stropek from Cockpit, and in this short video today I want to show you how you can create an Outlook plugin, to be more specific, an Outlook calendar plugin that accesses your Cockpit database via a web service, via Cockpit's OData web service. So our goal is to do the following. Let me launch the Office 365 calendar here. It's working here in the browser, but it would work exactly the same in the full client. Today, I can create an appointment, for instance, by dragging and dropping, opening the details pane, and I can, for instance, plan here to work at customer XYZ project ABC. What I want to have is I want to have an integration in Cockpit where I can pick the project and take the data that is stored in Cockpit about this project and insert it in any field that you see here on the screen. There is a multitude of possible applications for such plugins. You can, for instance, insert some project-specific data in your appointment and later on write an import interface into Cockpit to automatically create timesheets from your appointment and things like that. Of course, you can do the same for emails. You can write Word plugins like that. You can write Excel plugins like that. It's a generic mechanism how you can write Office add-ons that access Cockpit. This video will be quite technical, so I will show you how to write some code, and I assume that you have at least basic knowledge about web development, to be more specific about AngularJS, a little bit maybe about Typescript, a little bit about Microsoft Azure Web Apps. If you don't know these technologies, bear with me. I'm quite sure you will be able to follow, and maybe you see some interesting things that you want to dive deeper in later. Okay, so let's get started. Before we can write any code, we have to think of where we want to host our plugin. Office plugins written in JavaScript are hosted somewhere on the internet. And one of the most simple way of hosting web apps is Microsoft Azure. Here I have a test account of Microsoft Azure. You can get one for free. The first 30 days you can spend some dollars and try it out. Later on, the web apps that I'm going to use here will continue to be free. So you can run in Microsoft Azure your Office plugins if they don't consume too much resources, what my plugin here doesn't. So if you want to run such a small plugin, you can run it for free continuously in Microsoft Azure in web apps. So let's start by creating a web app that can host our Office plugin that will access Cockpit's OData interface. I go here to Microsoft Azure and click New, click on Web and Mobile, and select a web app. In our scenario, we want to write an Office plugin that enables us to pick a project from Cockpit, so let's call it Project Picker. Azure checked the name, it's available, and I will put it in the data center in North Europe because I'm here in Europe. Here, Europe is my home country. Austria is here in Europe. So let's hit create. This will take a few moments until the web app has been created. Once the web app has been created, we can install a plugin, an extension, how Microsoft calls it. This extension is called Visual Studio Online. So what is this Visual Studio Online? It enables us to develop or to write our small plugin directly in the browser using a nice little editor which you might know from Microsoft's product Visual Studio Code. So Azure Web Apps, they have the development environment or the editor built in if you enable it. And I will show you how you can enable it to write your code that will access the Cockpit database. So let's click on Tools. And here at the very bottom you see Extensions. And here we can hit Add. And it will take a few seconds until Azure has loaded all the available web app extensions. And here they are. We need Visual Studio Online as mentioned before. I hit OK again, and it will just take a few seconds until we have Visual Studio Online available. It's here. Here we are. We can select it and hit Browse to start our editor directly here inside the browser. Let me check if I have the... No, this is not the right account. Let's choose that one. It is a Microsoft account. This is just the demo subscription, so we should be logged in just a few moments. And here we are. What you see here is Visual Studio Online. It's the codename Monaco. Monaco is the codename of the editor that is built inside of the browser here. And what we got here is a sample file, hosting start.html. We don't need that one. We can delete it. What we need is our code. And of course, we could write the codes together, but I don't want you to watch me typing, and you can read the code in our GitHub repository. I will point you to the GitHub repository at the end of this video. But for this video, I prepared the 5 files that we need, and we can open them here in Explorer and just drag them over to Visual Studio Online. The files will be uploaded, and we can take this source code and we will walk you through in a few more moments. One important aspect here is that I personally love to program client-side web applications in Typescript. Typescript is a great language. It sits on top of JavaScript. It is a superset of JavaScript, and it adds some typing. And the beauty of TypeScript in that area, in the area of Office, is that Microsoft delivers type informations for the Office add-in SDK. So if you use TypeScript, you will get IntelliSense, you will get type checking, and all the nice things that you get from typings. But in order to be able to write TypeScript code and compile TypeScript code, we have to install the TypeScript compiler in our web app here, because I just want to do all the development here in the browser, completely platform independent, so you can do exactly the same on your Mac or on your Linux PC. So we can launch a console here directly in the browser, and there we can add the Node, we can access the Node Package Manager. So let's use the Node Package Manager to install TypeScript and a tool that is called TSD. TSD stands for TypeScript Definition. This will take, I don't know, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, I don't know. We don't wait until NPM has finished installing our tools. We will use the time to walk through or to go through the code. One of the most important things here is the manifest.xml file. The manifest.xml file is a description of our Office add-in. If you want to know all the details of this manifest XML and its capabilities, follow the hyperlink at the beginning of this file here. In that case, I just created a sample file. Very simple. You see a version and a provider name and some descriptive information. You could add things like icons and things like that. And 2 especially important aspects I would like to point your attention to. The first one here is the source location. This is important. Do you recognize the name of the Azure website here? It's Project Picker. It's exactly the website that we created here in Microsoft Azure. So here you just point to the start HTML file in which your Office add-in is created. And the second thing that I want to point out is here, this one. It tells the system that we want to write an appointment add-in. An appointment add-in that works when we edit an appointment. Edit here means create or edit. You can also create add-ins that work for mails, that work for viewing items only. You can write add-ins for Word, for Excel, and things like that. But today I want to focus on appointments. So creating this manifest is the first thing that you have to do in order to create an Office add-in. It doesn't contain any logic, it's just a description. Well, now we have to write some code. The first thing that we need to write is, of course, an HTML file. This HTML file is very simple. It contains a reference to the CSS framework Bootstrap, just to make things a little bit more pretty. Then we are going to use AngularJS. AngularJS is a very nice web development framework that you can use to write single-page apps. I'm going to use AngularJS here in this example. Last but not least, you see here the Office add-in JavaScript SDK. This is the API, the SDK that you need to communicate with the Office 365 in my case, that is hosting your add-in. So just add this script to your HTML file and you have the Office JavaScript add-in available. Down there, you see it's a classical AngularJS project. We have an ng app here. We created a container div that's important for Bootstrap. And here you see the ng view. So I'm not going to go into the details of AngularJS, just to tell you so much. ng view is the entry point. So I will use a single page app. This ng view will inject multiple views, so multiple, let's say, pages directly in this div. Well, why do we need multiple views? Well, we want to have the project list from which we can pick and choose, but we also need a login page. Cockpit has its own authentication mechanism. It's based on OAuth, but we will use a simplified version here to get the token. And therefore, we need a login page. And from that login page, we will redirect to the project picker page, and both pages will be injected exactly here because of the ng view attribute. So let's look at the console if our npm has finished. And yes, the npm has finished. We now have, I can show you that here, Typescript and TSD installed in our node modules folder. So what we can do now is we can get the TypeScript type definitions from GitHub by using the TSD tool. I just have to say TSD reinstall, save it, so it is saved to a directory I will show you in a second. And this TSD reinstall will now go out in a specific GitHub repository. It is called definitely typed, and fetch type informations from there. We have type informations here for AngularJS. We have type information for Office SDK, we have type information for jQuery and all these things. And these type informations will be very useful when we want to write our code because we get IntelliSense and early type checking and things like that. So here is the directory that I was speaking of a few moments ago. You see, TSD saved the AngularJS, jQuery, and Office.js metadata in this directory, and it even created us one single file which is called tsd.ts, and it references all the other files. So we just have to include this one and we are done. So you might ask yourself, well, why did TSD know that we are interested in exactly these three libraries? Well, I prepared something. I cheated a bit, to be honest. I prepared this tsd.json file where I already did the installation of the libraries that we need before, and I copied the JSON file in it. The TSD reinstall is nothing else than looking in this file and downloading these type definitions, as you can see, Angular, jQuery, and the Office SDK. You can get that TSD JSON file from our GitHub repository to get up and running in a second. So now we have the typings and we can start writing code. Here you see the implementation of the Office plugin. Just to show you how complex it is quite simple. It's just 150 lines of code, nothing more, and I would like to walk you through this code before we try it. It's quite simple and I will not go into the details, just give you the big picture. You can download the source code yourself and play with it. The first one is the reference to the TypeScript type definition. And this reference here is super important because you have TypeScript. I want to show you what I mean here. Here you see ng, it stands for Angular, dot, and you see I get IntelliSense for AngularJS. The same is true for the Office SDK. You see here, I have my appointment type here. And if I use the Office SDK and I hit dot, you see I get IntelliSense for the JavaScript Office SDK. And if I want to know, hey, what is this appointment compose type all about? I can hit F12, go to definition. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm here in the browser, I'm not used to that. I have to use the browser command. And you see, it brings me directly into the type definition. Recognize the directory here? It brings me into the type definition and I can read about what are the available fields and what can I do with them, what kind of methods do they offer, and so on. That's the beauty of TypeScript that we have here. So let's get back to our TypeScript file. Here we are back in our source code. So let's go up again, so you know what this first line is all about. The next thing are a few interfaces. As you might know, Time Cockpit is a project time tracking system. By the way, here you see Time Cockpit, you have the graphical calendar. Inside of Time Cockpit, we can take a look at all the projects. Here you see the list of projects, we can filter and things like that. We can take a look at the details of such a project. And it's important to know that Time Cockpit is extremely adaptable. You can adjust the data model, you can add additional fields, you can add references, you can change the business logic, workflows, lists, reports, permission system, and all this stuff. So the first thing that I often do here is I specify some TypeScript interfaces which are specific for my specific Time Cockpit installation. So in that case, I'm telling here the Office add-in that I am just interested in 2 fields of the project. In reality, typically, these interfaces are more powerful. You have more interfaces and they contain more information. But for our purposes, it's perfectly fine that a project has a unique identifier. It's just the technical internal project ID. For the programmers in the room, this is a GUID, a global unique identifier, and the application and the code, the project code here, both are string fields. We're using OData, and OData is returning all the data in a field that is called value. So I just have some interfaces here to be able to interact with Time Cockpit in a type-safe manner. So now we are really using the full power of TypeScript. Then I have created 2 controllers. The first one is the project list controller. And the project list controller, it should display a list of projects. Here you see the member that we can bind against. AngularJS supports data binding. But in the constructor, we see some additional logic. What I did here is checking whether the user has already logged in. So the entire sample here relies on the fact that we use local storage to cache access tokens for Time Cockpit. So the login screen asks the user for user and password, you enter user and password, and then it gets an access token from Time Cockpit and it stores the access token in local storage. This access token is valid for a few hours, and once the access token doesn't work anymore, it gets a new access token by asking the user for her credentials again. That's the whole idea. So what you see here is just checking the local storage whether we already have an access token here. So here you see how you can access Time Cockpit from such an API. Let's spend a few minutes on this statement. What we do here is we are using Angular's $HTTP service to access Time Cockpit's OData service. If you are interested in Time Cockpit's OData service, just take a look at help.timecockpit.com, and there you see the web API and the OData interface. You can read all the details, you get a lot of samples in C#, in JavaScript, in the REST interface, the REST calls, authentication, everything is described here in our online help. So for our purposes, we are accessing the entity project. And as you can see here in OData, it is possible to select just a subset of the project. The project can consist of even dozens of fields. We are only interested in 2 of them, so we save bandwidth, of course, and we get the result faster. We also, for demo purposes, limit the result to the top 20 rows, and we order everything by project code. Quite simple. The authorization is done using the token that I pick up in the login screen that you will see in a few more moments. Once this request is through, we get the list of projects and we can assign it to the project variable here, and we will do AngularJS data binding to present the list of projects. If Time Cockpit returns an unauthorized result, we know that the token is not usable anymore, so we redirect the user to the get token page. It's a single page application, so we use Angular's $location service. We redirect the user to the login page and ask her for her username and password. And that's it. The second important thing here is the pick appointment method. It shows how we can communicate with Office 365. The pick appointment method is called whenever the user clicks on a specific project. So in that case, we pick the project and want to create an appointment from it. So we get the current context the mailbox, the current item, and because of the manifest XML, we know that this item has to be an appointment, so we can safely cast it to an appointment. We also know that our add-in is only enabled for composing new appointments, so we can safely cast to appointment compose. And from there, it's just one additional line. We can say, take the field subject. This is the subject of the appointment. So if I create an appointment, this one is the subject field here. We take the subject and use the setAsync method to change the subject to working on project code. That's just for demo purposes. Of course, in reality, your code would be more elaborate in this method, probably. Okay. Let's take a quick look at the getToken controller. It's very simple. It has a username, password, and an optional login error. It uses the token endpoint of TimeCockpit, so I'm not using the full power of OpenID Connect and OAuth here. That would be far beyond the scope of this short demo. So I use the simplified version. I send basic authentication with user and password to this token endpoint, and what I get back is the token, and I save that in local storage. That's all this getToken controller does. Finally, we have some Angular stuff. You see, setting up the routing. Here you see the HTML templates. This presents the project list. It contains a table with all the projects, assigns the click header, so our pick appointment method that we took a look a few moments ago. We display the project code. The login form is a very simple form with an input email and an input password. And here we have the button, and this button triggers the getToken method. Very straightforward. If you know Angular, I'm sure you can read this source code immediately. But the last 3 lines are important for our specific example here, because that one is triggering our AngularJS add-in and inject it into our HTML file. You see, we assign here an initialized callback method, and this callback method, using Angular.bootstrap to bootstrap our application, we use jQuery to get the container. Just to remind you, here you see the container. So we use jQuery to get the container div, and we bootstrap the project picker Angular application, and this is exactly our application defined here in the Angular.module statement. So that's it. You see, not lots of code. Take my sample as a starting point, and I'm quite sure from there you can add the logic that you want to have. Okay, so let's try it. Let's compile the code and let's see how it works inside of Office 365. For compiling it, I go back to my console here and I just hit TSC. TSC stands for Typescript compiler. The Typescript compiler here picks up the tsconfig file. It's also a file that I created. And you see it references our app.ts file and it compiled it to JavaScript. Here you see our app.js. That's all the magic you have to do. And of course, this Typescript knows things like watching, so you can do the compilation in the background and all this stuff. If you're interested in Typescript, I encourage you to take a look at the website typescriptlang.org, and you can see a lot of samples there. You can learn the language. It's really great. And if you ask me, it is much more fun to write Typescript code than plain JavaScript code. Okay. So we have our HTML file, we have our manifest, and we have our app.js. We can try to activate our add-in here in Office. Here you see, again, the Office 365 calendar, and here at the right upper edge here, we can say Manage Add-ins and add our newly created add-in. And of course, it lives in the internet, so we say add-in from URL, https project picker .azure websites.net /manifest.xml. Let's try that one. Now Office downloads the manifest, takes a look at the manifest, and I can give my consent that this thing is installed in my Office environment. now we should have, here it is, our project picker from Time Cockpit in our Office 365 areas, in a calendar. And now, open a new appointment. Go to more details. And instead of recalling the name of the project that we want to work on ourselves, here I want to use our add-in. Let's do that. Click on add-in, and here you see the project picker, and let's try it. The login screen comes up. We are asked for our Time Cockpit user and password. Let's enter it. I saved my user and password here in the password keeper. I pick that one up. That's it, and get the password, enter the password and hit login. And if everything works fine, here you see the list of project. It was read from Time Cockpit using Time Cockpit's OData Web API. And let's say we work on DB maintenance, click on it, and you see on the left hand side we have working on project DB maintenance. And in exactly the same workflow, you can change all the fields, you can add additional data here in this body area and do whatever you want with your Outlook appointment so that you can later on use the appointment, for instance, for interfaces, automatic processing, so that your Time Cockpit timesheet records are automatically derived from it, and so on and so on. Hit save, and here we have our appointment. Do you want to see how that works in the Outlook full client? I can show you that. Here I have the Outlook full client, and you see our appointment from Office 365 or the web interface is already there. So let's use the Outlook full client now to create a new appointment. Okay, I use Outlook in the German version, but I'm quite sure if you can't speak German, you can figure out what all these menu items mean. And in that case, you see Office add-ins is here in the upper right corner. Again, I have my project picker. Let's use the project picker here. And if everything goes right, here we have the project list. And I can scroll down and do exactly the same. Use the budget app. Working on project budget app. Hit save, and here we are. We have our appointment inside of the Outlook full client, and it worked nicely. Our plugin worked for the full client, and it worked on the web client. If you like what you've seen, you can take a look at the source code in our GitHub repository. I opened it here for you. It is called github.com/softwarearchitects. That's the name of our company, /timecockpit.scripts. And from there, you select the timecockpit.angular outlook plugin sample. And here you have the sample code. Clone the repository, play with it. If you don't have a Time Cockpit subscription, you can get one for free. You can try it for 30 days. You've seen that it is very simple to create such an Outlook plugin and host it in Microsoft Azure. It's also free. You get a large subscription for 30 days, but the web apps will continue to be free even after the period of 30 days. I hope you liked my example. If you have questions, feel free to contact us. And if you create some cool Outlook add-ins that do nice things with your Time Cockpit installation, feel free to drop me an email. I'm always interested what our customers do with our APIs. So enjoy playing with the Office SDK. See you next time. Bye.